referee again checking his watch. And there it goes! The final whistle!
Carlos Morrison will wait inside the box for this from Martin Knapp. And a header on it there, and that might have been it. That was a goal for Canada. The header was at Jason deVos.
One last chance for Canada. Sophie Schmidt takes a deflection. Matheson! Is that the goal that wins bronze for Canada?
Qualified for World Cup 86, defeating Honduras by a score of 2-1 here in St. John's, Newfoundland this afternoon.
Welcome to the Canada Soccer Nation podcast. My name is Jason deVos. I'm the Director of Development with Canada Soccer. And as always, every other week, I'm joined by Brad Fougere, Digital and Corporate Communications Manager with Canada Soccer. Brad, how's your week or last 2 weeks been so far as you manage your way through a global pandemic with a house full of children?
Full of children. I guess it feels that way sometimes.
With two, that's a full house.
Two, yeah, it's fair. That's fair. Yeah, we're doing okay. We're doing all right. It's just talking with our intrepid producer, Dylan, before we came on here about the challenges, the blessings, the curses. Everyone always talks about how important it is to spend quality time with your kids when they're this age because they grow up and they grow up fast. And
they do.
We've got an extra special 8-month extended version of ensuring that we get quality time with our young 7 and 8-year-old.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good. It's good. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out once they go back to real life, if that happens in the near term. But no shortage of things on the go. That's for sure.
It's a tricky space right now. And you referenced there, they grow up fast. They absolutely do. My oldest, my daughter, has gone off to university. So she is out of the house and
single tear.
No, there were no tears in our household. No,
none.
She was ready to go, and we were ready for her to go. And it's all good. No, she's
no crying in football. Is that what you yelled as she left? There's no crying in football.
There's no crying in football. No, it was good. Yeah, it was good. She's at university now and enjoying the experience. So, and that's good. And my son is in high school and he's dealing with the hybrid version of high school now, which in our part of the country involves some parts of some days of the week in class, socially distanced and masked up and what have you. And then other parts of each day online, doing online learning. And I know a lot of parents around the country are dealing with that challenging reality of what that actually looks like. So if anything, I think the appreciation for teachers has gone through the roof as parents homeschool over this period of time. So, but on the soccer front, very busy, a lot going on. Talk us through what you've experienced in the last couple of weeks. What's caught your eye and what have you been reflecting on?
Yeah, there's lots going on. Obviously, we've got the CPL bubble that's wrapping up. Got Halifax Wanderers FC, my hometown team.
Stephen Hart.
Forge FC.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Former national team head coach, Stephen Hart, obviously.
And by the way, has to be said, one of the nicest people in football. I've yet to find anyone say a bad word about Stephen Hart, and a great coach, educator as well. And certainly someone who has very many fans from coast to coast.
Yeah, for sure. It's a litmus test of who you are if you're walking around saying bad things about Stephen Hart. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's got an opportunity to lead his team both to the 2020 Island Games / Canadian Premier League title and also the coveted spot in the Canadian Championship final with an opportunity for Halifax to move on to the Scotiabank CONCACAF Champions League. So that's a pretty exciting opportunity for Halifax. It's one that Forge understands and knows and is fighting for after having come up just short last year to Cavalry FC in the 2019 and inaugural Canadian Championship final. So should be a great game on Saturday, 3:00 Eastern time, I believe, One Soccer, CBC. So yeah, we'll obviously have our eyes on that. Last night was a interesting match in MLS out west.
If you're a TFC fan, it was a fantastic game. I mean, they'll have been very delighted with the results out west, as Montreal Impact had 1 foot in the Canadian Championship final and unfortunately weren't able to get the 2nd foot into the Canadian Championship final.
Yeah. Canadian Championship has been an interesting competition for Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver throughout the years. I've seen some pretty interesting things go down. Lightning strikes, replays, teams thinking that they're moving forward, feeling real comfortable in the position that they're in, only to have it go sideways. And this is just one more example of the of the fun of club football competitions and domestic championships. So yeah, exciting for Toronto FC. Obviously, came up short last year against Montreal Impact, but we'll have an opportunity to go back to the Scotiabank CONCACAF Champions League, where they were finalists not that long ago. And of course, the details of the Canadian Championship final, when, where, how, are all sort of victim to COVID-19. So we'll have some details on that on an upcoming podcast, I'm sure. But for now, Toronto FC ready to go, waiting Halifax Wanderers FC and/or Forge FC. NWSL is back to steal a term. So lots of women's national team players taking part in that competition. Alicia Chapman back on the field for Houston, champions of their abridged competition there earlier in the season for Houston. And Kaylin Sheridan came up with the save of the week in NWSL this week as well. So lots of women's national team players making waves there, and lots of men's national team players making waves elsewhere.
Yeah, two Canadian players on the short list of 40 for the 2020 Golden Boy Award. Tell us a little bit about that, Brad.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling, I think, is probably the best way to put it. I was reading an article this morning from Karl-Heinz Rummenigge. I don't know how to say his name, but
Rummenigge.
Yeah, there we go.
Rummenigge. There you go.
Football legend, obviously. I've never had to say his name out loud. Loving this podcast for that. But yeah, obviously a legend, and current CEO of Bayern Munich, who is talking about the type of fan that Alphonso Davies attracts to the game. But not just through the lens of being the Bayern CEO, but being a global football personality and understanding his reach. So yeah, young Alphonso found himself on the short list of 40 players for the Golden Boy, which was initially conceived by Tuttosport, an Italian outlet, an Italian sports-specific outlet, and has evolved over the years to become very much a European media young player award, highly coveted award. And another young Canadian, Jonathan David, also finds himself there after an exciting summer transfer to France from Belgium.
Yeah. Exciting times. Lots going on in the world of football. I can't help but think every week, at the end of every week, just how bizarre this whole period of time must be for players, and experiencing that. I was able to watch on the weekend two of my former teams playing against each other. Ipswich against Wigan Athletic. Ipswich were the victors. Difficult one for me to watch and root for, obviously, as I played for both and want them both to do well. But the Tractor Boys came out on top. But it was great to see the pristine pitch of Portman Road again on TV as I was watching the game. But couldn't help but think of how bizarre it must be for the players to play in front of the North Stand and not have any fans there and not hear any noise, any crowd noise, because that's all part of the experience for players. So it's been, I'm sure, a very challenging period of their careers. But like we always say, the hardest steel is forged in the hottest heat, and this is the resiliency training, I suppose, for a lot of players, that they're having to fight their way through this. But lots going on in the world of soccer, but domestically as well. And after the break, we will be joined by Mr. Isaac Raymond, manager of referees at Canada Soccer, to talk about life in the bubble in Prince Edward Island in Charlottetown, and what that's been like, what that experience has been like for the referees and the players and everyone involved in the island games and the CPL. So stay tuned. After the break, we'll be joined by Mr. Isaac Raymond. Pleased to be joined now by Mr. Isaac Raymond, the manager of refereeing at Canada Soccer, from inside the bubble in the island games. And Isaac, I have a picture of you in my mind that looks very much like Tom Hanks in Castaway, with a long, full head of hair and a long beard. Are you talking to your football Wilson yet, or how is the last 5-6 weeks been for you inside the bubble?
Well, I've never had to struggle to find a barber, so that part of it's not a problem for me. I haven't had the weight loss that he's had. But otherwise, there is a lot of similarities, that's for sure.
What's it been like? I mean, when I first heard, thinking as a former player, when I first heard about what the program and the tournament would entail, my first thought was, wow, cabin fever. That is going to set in. What's it been like for you? I mean, you've been there for how many days now? Weeks? 6 weeks, I think, in total.
I think we're at day number 40. Not that anybody's counting. Day number 40 here, and then 2 weeks of isolation before we got on the plane. So it's been a long time of being on your own.
Yeah.
It's been pretty strange. It was pretty strange for the first couple of weeks for sure. Once we got here, it was to the field and back, and that was it. Doing the training and then refereeing the games, and nothing more than that. And we actually, once we got into a routine, it got a lot better. It didn't change. It just got a lot better. We just got used to the routine and just kept going at it.
Yeah. There must be a lot of downtime for everyone. How have you utilized that for the development of all of the referees that are in the camp right now?
Well, actually, we've been pretty lucky that the facilities here are good. There's, gym facilities and pool facilities, and then obviously the meeting spaces and that. So we've used the time to do training and development within the hotel, and then of course video review of the matches and that type of thing. But all of these referees they have real jobs. So their 9-to-5 world is stuck in their hotel rooms doing their real jobs and popping out every once in a while to grab a coffee and then back to it. And then we spend most evenings together, looking at video and meeting and doing the development that way. We're on the field at 8:00 every morning. So we kind of took that early slot to give them a chance to get back to work in their real jobs after the field session. So we're on the field every day, 8 a.m. We get back to the hotel about 9:30, and then we just camp out in our rooms and go back to work. And so it's a bit of a strange routine in that regard.
I've heard some of the CPL managers talk about this period of time as an opportunity to really build the camaraderie within their club. Have you seen the same type of camaraderie built amongst the refereeing pool?
Yeah, very much so. As a matter of fact, possibly, I don't want to one-up the teams in any way, but possibly more, because referees don't get this chance to be together for as long as we have been here. To perhaps go away for a few days at a time to a camp or that type of thing is about the max. So to be here for as long as we have, it's been great. The group is an amazing group. They've spent a lot of time bonding. Most of them knew each other. Some of them didn't. And the ones that didn't got on board pretty quickly. So, there's all kinds of fun activities that they've done on their own, and nothing that I can repeat on this call. But it's been pretty good. It's been pretty amazing to watch them get together as their own team and make sure that they're a force, that is supporting each other moving forward. As you can imagine, there's ups and downs in this game, and it's great to have these people on standby to help each other. It's been pretty cool to watch.
Canada Soccer has a long history of developing very, very good referees. You must be really pleased with what you've seen over the course of the 6 weeks and the development opportunity. It's almost like an extended training camp for you, isn't it?
Yeah, big time. That's exactly what we've characterized it as a training camp. We brought in 16 referees. One of them, Carly Shaw McLaren, she came here with no CPL experience at all. She refereed 3 games here successfully. And I like to think that the support she got from her colleagues here really made a big difference in her development. Then, of course, we had, a usual sprinkle of veterans and a couple of even next-gen referees. Mm-hmm. And between all of them, they've been absolutely phenomenal, not only refereeing the games, but also doing that within the constraints of this bubble, which has, physical constraints, but also, there are some mental constraints of being within this world, and they've come through it amazingly well, just amazing.
Yeah, it's almost an element of resiliency training, isn't it, for the referees as well as the players? So given that you're bumping into players and coaches in the hotel while you're in the bubble, have they actually been nicer to the referees this time around, or is it still the same level of arguing and refereeing abuse that's being exhibited by the participants?
No, actually, it's been really good. The players and the coaches have been very professional. Obviously, I expect the referees to be the same, and they have been. And I actually think it's been a great opportunity for everybody to sort of build those relationships that are important, as you know, with getting onto the field together. And if you know them a little bit better, it makes the games go that much easier. So it's actually been a real positive of this experience.
Yeah, that's a good thing. It's great to hear that, because I think we often take referees for granted, and the reality is we can't have a game without them. So it's great to hear that the relationships are improving on that front. What's next from your perspective, Isaac? Obviously, you've spent a very condensed period of time with this core group of referees, and a great development opportunity. What's on the horizon for them once they depart the Island Games?
Well, I don't want to get ahead of myself because we've got the big match on Saturday. But once they depart, it's really a matter of building on what we've produced here, which is a lot of information and a lot of a material that we can now roll out to the country. So we're going to take this material and see what we can do with it. Unfortunately, we don't know how we're going to be rolling it out, of course, because we're not sure what's ahead of us. But that's the idea, is to take all of this and put in place some strategies for education around the country.
Excellent. Fantastic. Well, listen, you've only got a few more days to go, and you'll be out of the Big Brother house, for lack of a better term. Keep up the great work. All the best to the crew on Saturday in the final, and we'll look forward to chatting with you again in the near future.
Thanks, Jason. Much appreciated. Talk to you soon.
Wonderful. Thanks, Isaac. When we come back, we're going to have our first listener recommended guest, and I've got a very special intro to read to you. So stay tuned. That's coming back after the break. Our guest this week on the Canada Soccer Nation podcast is someone that I know, but not as well as I'd like to know. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And he was recommended to us. This is our first listener recommendation that we've taken from our pool of listeners who emailed us at podcast@canadasoccer.com. And I'm going to read part of the email. I'm not going to tell you the name of the individual who recommended we speak to Barry, but I am going to read part of his email to us, so that you can understand who our guest is. So this is what was sent to us. You mentioned in the podcast that you want to talk to people in the soccer community across Canada who have been builders. I know that I'm biased, but I really think Barry Morrison with the Fredericton District Soccer Association, and now also the University of New Brunswick, is a person who you should talk to on the podcast. He has been such a huge mentor for me in the last decade. I got involved in coaching U4s before Barry returned to the club. When he came, he brought this enthusiasm and passion for coaching and coach education. It was so contagious. Each summer, he'd get me to take a new course or spend a few hours on the pitch learning different things. I did it because he made everything so accessible and fun, and I could see how it was helping me with the players. He's the reason I did my pre-B and then my B license and now the youth license. He's pushed me to be a better coach and to constantly learn, improve, and evolve my thinking about coaching as I move up age groups and teams. I've seen him work with under fours and university players. He can move seamlessly between them all. I am so lucky to get to spend a few hours every week with my players, but I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Barry, who has been such a passionate advocate for coaching and continued education. He's a builder in our community. We're not a huge club in a big city, so Barry has limited resources, and perhaps he's stuck with people like me, but he's done so much, especially during the pandemic. Now, I read this because I could not have written a better introduction myself, and I want to welcome to the podcast from a Fredericton District Soccer Association, Mr. Barry Morrison. Barry, I've got a little tear in my eye. This is what coaching is all about, inspiring people. And what was your emotion? What were you feeling when you listened to that?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of a chuckle, Jason, because I mean, I can tell, I know now who that's from.
So how much did you pay your wife to send that in?
Hear them? Yeah, no, I mean, it cost me a lot of money, new living room furniture and everything. So
yeah.
But it kind of warm, like to be viewed in that way, or to have people refer to you as a mentor or somebody who's helped them or inspired them along their coaching journey is something that really hits home. And for me, it's a major part of why I'm involved in the game, and not just the game of soccer, but sport as a whole. I think it's so important to excite people about what we get to do when we go out with young athletes.
Yeah. So you and I met in person for the first time. I knew who you were a few years ago because your name had been mentioned to me by Mr. Neil Gillespie, our coach liaison at the Coaching Association of Canada, as someone that we should be working with. And so I knew of you, but I didn't know you. And then we met last year on the children's license in Halifax. And one of the activities on the children's license is we ask coaches to speak to the class, their colleagues in the group, like they are parents in your program. And your role, your task is to explain to the parents what you do and how you do it and why you do it that way. And I remember sitting in the back of the room with Mike Wyatt and Mark O'Sullivan, the other instructors, and listening to you present to the group. And I just thought to myself, I really like this guy. Like, I'd want to play at his club because he seems like a good guy who's a lot of fun and really has a good understanding of what kids in that space need and what parents need to hear. How much of your role at the FDSA is working with parents and communicating with them, presenting to them, and how much of your role is on the field with players?
So my role is primarily a technical role, obviously. So I'm spending a lot of my time on the field with players and then working with the parents and the coaches ultimately. So parents' information, that's a small part of my role, leading into seasons, making sure they understand what's coming and what's going to be happening within the club over the next few months or what they can expect for their child. And then obviously just ongoing communication. As a small club, we get to take a very personal approach to things. So I get to work with parents very much as individuals. I know most of the parents for most of our players and can have a conversation with them when I'm on the side of a field watching a game or supporting their children. So that's super fortunate. And then probably about 50% of my time is spent on the field working with coaches and players. Primarily, I view myself as a coach developer, and my primary role is to mentor and help our coaches become better at what they do. As was mentioned in the introduction, we're a small club with limited resources, so we need to help our volunteer coaches be excited and engaged in their role. So I spend a lot of time doing that. And then, you know, the regular emails and planning and creating the other side of it takes up another 20 or 30% of my day.
Yeah. I had a doctor's appointment yesterday and I was speaking to the doctor who was phenomenal. Like, his interpersonal skills were off the charts. He would have been a definite candidate for transformational coaching. But we were talking about the profession of medicine and the profession of, you know, being a doctor. And I asked the question, I said, you know, how flawed is the process of going through the application process for med school and looking at the grades and the marks? I mean, obviously you have to be smart. You have to have the grades to get into med school. But I asked the question, how much of your job is about interpersonal skills and relationship building? And he said 100%. That's all it's about. It's about working with people. And I felt there was a strong connection there between coaching and medicine in that aspect. How much of your job do you feel is dependent on your interpersonal skills and building relationships, whether it's with players, coaches, parents, other stakeholders? How key is that for you and what you do?
It's probably the number one thing that I do. And I would give credit to Rob Gale when he was with Manitoba Soccer. I remember asking him how he impacted that provincial association so well. And he told me right away, I've just built relationships for the first couple of years, build relationships. And I was young at the time and beginning in my coaching or technical club staff pathway, and was really unclear on exactly how I would do the best that I could. And I took that and really used it to make that a priority for me in every aspect of what I do, building relationships within the club, with our external stakeholders, with our coaches, with our players, with everybody I could. And it helps me immensely, you know, not only when I make a mistake or something doesn't go as planned, having a quality relationship with the people around you and the people in your club helps, as they understand that you're doing your best and you're putting your best foot forward. And it really just helps people feel connected to the organization, to me as a leader within our organization, and helps us to kind of do a better job moving things forward. So I think it's paramount in what I do.
How do you develop that? Is this something that comes naturally for you? Were you always an outgoing person? Because you've got a big personality. I mean, I noticed that when we first met in person. I think this is a guy who commands an audience, and you can really see that you have that ability to relate to people. Is that something that you just happen to have and you were born with it? Or is that something that you felt you acquired over a period of time?
Look, I grew up on a small downtown street in a small city. And I would walk up and down the street, and the older neighbors would call me the mayor because I knew all their names, be yelling across the street, "Hello, Mrs. Thompson," and "Nice to see you again." And they used to joke, and that was when I was 4 and 5 years old. So I think my parents early on just said, "Barry, it's nice to greet people, and you call them Mr. and Mrs." And so when I saw people, I did that, and it kind of carried through into my even my youth soccer years and my teen years. I was just willing to go out and meet people and build relationships and learn what I could. And yeah, it's gotten me a long, long way.
Did you come from a sporting family? Was this something that was just inherent in your household?
My father grew up not really as a high performing athlete, and my mother grew up, again, as someone who played sports for fun. My parents were involved in things like racquetball or rugby, and obviously some hockey and volleyball thrown in there. So sports were around my family, and activity was a part of what we did. But I was the one who really ventured the family into the sport of soccer and introduced it to the family. And I played, and I have 2 younger brothers who played. One who was very, very good, and we had a lot of luck.
Where did you grow up? Where were you born? What was your childhood like in sport?
Yeah, born and raised in Fredericton, New Brunswick. So I'm back home. I've had the privilege to coach in different parts of the country, but back in Fredericton, playing for the club I started playing for when I was 7 years old. Came in and started playing because my cousin had a soccer jersey on one day, and I liked it. And I said, "Mom, I want to play whatever sport he just came from." And she signed me up for soccer. They knew nothing about soccer at the time, and I just kind of fell in love with the sport. I made good friends through the sport, and was able to just continue to venture through it over time, over my whole life, really. So played basketball and hockey and everything else growing up, but always kind of fell back on soccer when I was looking for something to really put my time into.
It's funny how kids they're influenced by certain things, and the jersey that your brother was wearing, your friend was wearing, you would never think that would influence your decision to play a certain sport. You would think it would be something else. But growing up in a smaller region, or not a massive, big town, big city, metropolitan area, we talked about this a little bit on the phone the other day. Dealing with a pandemic in big cities, it's different. In rural areas, it's a different way of life. Talk a little bit about the experience you've had with the club over the last 6 to 7 months as you've dealt with the COVID situation. How has that been in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, I mean, we've been really lucky in New Brunswick that we've, I kind of say we're small. We don't have a lot of people coming and going. So as we got things under control very early on, it allowed us to begin to do sport and everything back fairly quickly. And with our kind of spread out population and not having a lot of people really on top of each other, we don't have 20-story apartment buildings that are lined up down a block with little parks that hundreds of people need to gather at. We've got the luxury of space and area for people. So as we've been able to start to reintroduce more into what we do here in New Brunswick, we've been able to introduce sport back at a pretty quick rate, which has been great. We've been able to get back on the field. We've been playing games in New Brunswick with the support of public health and Soccer New Brunswick since July of this year. So that's been really fortunate for us. I know we're ahead of some provinces. We've had modified rules, but ultimately, when you're in the game, you forget about some of those modified rules. They're such small pieces of the overall picture of what football is for everybody that we're really lucky that we just have gotten to kind of progress. And even now, people are feeling fairly relaxed and fairly comfortable as a generality with where we are in terms of the whole pandemic situation. We know that cases will come back as fall exists and people are coming and going from schools, but the Maritimes are still really isolated from the rest of Canada and the United States. We still have quarantines in place, so numbers remain very, very low, and as a result, our activity is coming back quite a bit already.
Yeah, I was speaking with Mike Wyatt the other day, and he's now at Halifax City as the executive director. I was asking him about the return to soccer, what that's been like for him at the club level, and he was saying that it's really reminded him of why kids play soccer, and it isn't about winning the tournament or winning the provincial championship or winning a national championship. It's about that sense of community. Have you experienced that at the club level as well? Do you feel that there's a tighter bond maybe between people because of the pandemic that we're all dealing with?
Yeah, I think people have really come together. For us at our club, we needed to increase the number of volunteers we had to make sure that we had cleaning and safety and screening protocols all in place. And people just came forward. I saw players that I'd coached 10 or 15 years ago as teenagers coming back just to volunteer. They said, we heard you needed volunteers. So there has been a really great community feel around some of these things for us. And parents have stepped up, and everybody's just been really great about trying to get us back and get us involved. Again, being in a small province, we've got really great community connections just with the other clubs in the province. So clubs from the other centers, we've been chatting regularly, working on how we all return in similar ways and how we can complement each other as we do that province-wide, not just locally. So there've been a lot of really kind of, I guess, the heartwarming moments in sport where we're collaborating over competing against each other in order to make sure that everybody gets a good experience.
I think that piece is crucial, the collaboration versus war. And Dave Nutt does a great presentation on this around how what your perception is of competition. It's shaped by, your viewpoint, whether you view the opponent as a colleague that is engaging in a collaborative effort with you where both parties benefit, or whether you view them as the enemy and you're trying to vanquish them or demolish them and prove your superiority. So I feel like a lot of the clubs I've spoken to across the country have moved much closer towards the idea of collaboration than they were maybe previously, pre-pandemic. You went to University of New Brunswick. You had a kinesiology degree. Did you know at that stage when you went to university that you wanted to be a coach, or was that a realization that happened after for you? Like when did you kind of catch that coaching bug?
Oh, great question. So I wasn't a good student, to say the least, and it took me a while to get around to university. And my father would sit me down and do goal-setting activities and help me decide what it was I needed to do and how I was going to, become a contributor to society. And I got to a point about 18 years old where I'd already been coaching for 4 or 5 years. I'd been involved with youth soccer. I'd done some of my coach education. And I said to my father, I said, look, I'm going to be a coach. And that's what I'm going to do. And I need a kinesiology degree. I felt at the time, I need to become a personal trainer so that I can have the flexibility to understand the sports science, because you can't get a full-time job in coaching. And I just assumed I'd be a volunteer my whole life, but I needed to find something that would give me the flexibility to volunteer as a coach. And then partway through university, I started meeting people who had full-time jobs coaching. And I started to figure out what was it that they had done and where had they come from and how was that working. And a lot of them obviously had backgrounds as professional players. And I thought, well, okay, that's not me. I can play, but I'm not a professional. But I found out about the National Coaching Institute. And I set a goal. I said, I need to go to the National Coaching Institute. That's going to be my pathway to becoming a professional coach. And that's kind of what I went about doing, and was able to achieve that and attend that piece after my undergraduate degree from UNB.
Mm-hmm. How do you respond to that question? Because I get asked this a lot. Do you need to be a professional player to be a good coach, or is it an asset, or is this something that you feel is almost used as a bias against those who haven't played the game professionally?
I mean, I think it's definitely an asset. You know, if you've played professionally, there's a chance you've been involved in very high level training environments. There's a chance that you've been exposed to lots of analysis of the match, and you've learned a lot about all of those details. And I think that's a massive piece. I think there's also another piece of learning and understanding what the coaching process is. Before I even really got into serious into coaching, I learned about facilitation as part of a university course and how do you facilitate, which now, of course, we use heavily in coach education. But even the process of how do we, focus and center what we're doing on individuals versus teaching a team gave me tools that, your average player coming out of a professional environment may not know. One example I always use is when I went to the National Coaching Institute, I had a rugby coach that was there with me, who had played for the national team, was a sevens rugby player and one of the most capped rugby players on the sevens tour at the time. And, he spent the whole time going, oh, wow, that's why we did that. Oh, I had no idea that there was theory behind our coach doing that with us all the time. And I spent more time kind of digging into the tactics of soccer and digging into working with different groups or different teams in the Victoria area and learning other aspects of the game because I had already taken in so much of the theory in order to catch up and be in that same environment with my rugby coaching friend. So we learn from every place we are, but it's how do we take it and frame it and apply it that really is what makes us good as a coach, right? And it's no one thing that makes somebody a great coach or a potential great coach, but it's a number of characteristics, and we can build and grow those in lots of different ways. It doesn't have to be through playing professionally. It doesn't have to be through coach education, although both of those really help us connect aspects of what we might be doing.
You mentioned a word there that I want to expand on a little bit, facilitator. Talk about that. What is that? And what have you learned over the years as a facilitator that allows you to develop great coaches?
Yeah, so I started facilitating as something in university. I got a professor asked me and said, look, we'll give you some course credit if you come and help us with this. And what we were doing was working with youth at risk. And we were working with youth at risk who typically, are low on confidence, maybe low on self-esteem in some cases, and struggling to kind of fit in and find their spot. And what we would do is we would take them, and over the course of the day, we would take them from an initial group who was just meeting to a group that was ready to challenge themselves to climb a telephone pole and walk across a wire that's about 35 feet in the air. And something that no sane person would do without a whole bunch of build-up to it. And within that, I really learned that facilitation wasn't about me. It was about the people that I was working with. And it was about meeting them where they were at and using the skills or tools that I may have had to help them understand what they're capable of and help them understand ways that they can grasp and move towards certain ends. And at the end of this day, we would have these young people up on these ropes going, I never thought I could do this, crying because they were scared, but crying because they were excited that they had achieved something and they'd been able to do something really, really well. And that was how I was introduced.
So how did you transfer that into your sport and your club specifically? You work with coaches in your organization, and we heard in the intro the impact that you've had on one individual. So do you take the same approach with everyone, or is there a pattern to it, or do you see common threads when you're working with individuals?
Every coach is different, and they have different needs and different wants and desires. So it's really very much about them as the individual and letting them guide the process. Some coaches, the coach that wrote the introduction that you read, for example,
you know who it is, don't you?
Oh, there's no question in my mind who that is, Jason. But loves to engage and will send me match reports and very detailed reviews of the coaching sessions. So it provides me with a lot of information to ask questions and bounce ideas back and forth off of, and engage in detailed conversation. We have other coaches who are equally as committed, but don't, have the same maybe ability to express themselves, through email. So they'll kind of make a comment on the side of the field or ask a question and give us a chance to engage and to chat and to share ideas. So it gives us a lot of different ways that we can bring things out of coaches. And sometimes we have to bring a coach. We have to understand when it's time to bring a coach to an experience. So I want to bring you and have you experience this so that we can then have you understand the next stage in your coaching development or in where you're going with something. So having them have those experiences so that we can then kind of debrief, or we can then give them an opportunity to apply some of that experience into their own coaching context and then think about what that means for them. So everyone's going to have a different need and a different way they want to communicate and they like to communicate. And our role in facilitation is to learn what that is and to kind of probe them towards it. I think most of them would probably say that I just ask them questions and they would just wish I would give them the answer. But I think, we know that the struggle that they may go through as they try and answer the questions I ask is also part of their learning process.
I think the whole concept of coach education, whether it's formal or informal learning, has changed immensely over the last couple of years. And even thinking back to when I started my coach education pathway, it used to be very sort of one directional. The instructors are the font of all knowledge, and they're going to give you the information when they deem you to be good and ready to receive it, not before. And now it's much more about that facilitation process and treating everyone as an individual. You look at your other roles in the game. You're obviously not just working at FDSA. You're also the head coach of UNB men's soccer team at the University of New Brunswick. Given the amount of expanding professional playing opportunities that there are in Canada now, MLS, CPL, opportunities just down the road. Halifax Wanderers are in the final of the Island Games on the weekend. Does that change your approach working with university players, knowing that professional soccer is a very real possibility for them? And if so, what do you do differently with them?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I think it definitely starts to change things, and that we've got an opportunity now to inspire our young players to really strive for that professional avenue. And we've got a responsibility, I think, at the university level and the U Sport level in Canada to connect with the CPL and to ensure that we are a pathway for athletes to go in that direction and see that. So as coaches now, what we do, as much as it's going to be about performance at a university level, and my role is ensuring that our University of New Brunswick men's team can be successful in our competitions, there's an aspect of it that I need to ensure that they can be successful beyond our competitions and beyond their time here. For some, that may very well be CPL and helping to guide them and shape them so that they're ready to go on and play soccer at that level. And for others, it's just going to be going on to be great people within our community or communities elsewhere. So, it changes an aspect of it, but overall, it doesn't change what we're doing entirely. I mean, I think that the role of every university coach is to help their athletes meet their goals within their time at their university and playing for their institution, but set them up to meet their goals and be successful with their goals post their playing at the institution that coach is at. So, it adds a layer, but it doesn't really change the overall end goal.
What's the most difficult aspect of coaching for you?
Oh, wow. That depends on the day. Every day I'll have a different answer. I think it's trying to fit the puzzle pieces together and to understand, when I talk about coaching being, a combination of art and science, and understanding when it's the science and when it's the art that takes over can be a really hard piece to try and navigate yourself through, because the science is such great information and such great ability to guide us in certain ways. But how we apply that is so much the art of what we do. And trying to kind of figure out when and how to balance those in what way is really one of the most difficult pieces for me.
Looking back at your career and where you are now, what's the one accomplishment or achievement that you're most proud of?
Geez, you're really getting heavy hitters in now, Jason.
I'm trying to get to the real Barry Morrison here. I'm trying to really dig under the layers that are there. Yeah,
I guess it's not a singular accomplishment, but it's just a trend that I've seen, and it's the number of people who I've worked with early in their coaching careers who have continued coaching. And I mean, I've been very lucky to work with some people who will certainly and have certainly surpassed me in terms of where they sit as coaches in the Canadian soccer system. But seeing them still working and thinking to the first time I saw them on a field coaching, or the first conversation I had with them about their coaching pathway, and them moving from a community coach into a more competitive coach, or them moving from the community stream into the performance stream of coach education, and kind of reflecting back on those things. I've got a lot of really proud moments and a lot of connections I really carry through to this day with people who now work all across the country as coaches, and that's something that I'm really super proud of and reflect back on all the time.
Yeah. Next week, September 19th to 27th is National Coaches Week. And it's really a time to celebrate the positive impact that coaches have had on athletes and on their clubs, their organizations, their communities over the years. Who was the best coach that you ever had as an athlete growing up? And what made them the best coach? Why do you still remember?
So I guess I've got a couple of really key inspirations to how I came to where I was, but a gentleman named Dwight Hornibrook, who now works in Halifax, he's the director of soccer operations at Halifax County, is a Fredericton native, played soccer here at UNB and coached maybe one or two winters when I was a young kid playing. And he was just a marvel to me. Every practice that I went to that he ran was enjoyable. It was fun. We worked hard in every single one of them. We came away with a new skill or a new trick or something new that we'd learned in every practice we had. And him and I have a relationship that carries on till this day. And I can remember starting coaching and, coaching a game and having him come up to me and comment on seeing me coach for the first time after that game. And so, someone like him would have been kind of an initial, first coach I had that really showed me what was possible as a coach. And then someone who's continued on as a mentor. We're now 25 years, I think, that he's been guiding me.
It's amazing the impact that coaches can have on young athletes and on young coaches. You do a lot of work as a master facilitator with the NCCP, but when did you realize, or was there a moment in your career that you realized that you could impact coaches as well as players, and that becoming a coach educator, a coach developer was on the cards for you?
I think when I had a job when I worked in Alberta with the Lethbridge Soccer Association, and that was the first job I had that coach education was part of my responsibilities. And I started to learn a little bit about it through the coach education team in Alberta at the time. And I was just down the highway from Jim Laughlin, who's now obviously the Canada Soccer master coach developer. And I had some good people around me who kind of guided me on there, but it was really some of my first steps into the learning environment where I got to start to work with coaches and talk with them and see their curiosity and see that many of them had curiosity that matched my own, and that we could kind of share our curiosities and talk back and forth and learn a bit together. And that really excited me early on. And I started to look at, are there more opportunities for me to do this in other areas? I said, I've done a bunch of the coach education, so I've got a background in the theory, so maybe I can start to help. And it was when I came back to New Brunswick in 2012 that Coach New Brunswick really gave me a huge opportunity to just run with it. And it's been so much fun to get to just be involved at everything from grassroots and competition introduction to competition development to training learning facilitators. I now train learning facilitators in all sports. So just all of the different aspects of it are fascinating to me, are really amazing. I learn things every day that I facilitate that I turn around and apply to my coaching, which is one of the most amazing side benefits. Is my athletes in my club and everybody that I work with benefits from every time I get to go facilitate a course, because I bring something back and I do something differently because of it. So it's kind of an addiction. It's a tough addiction to work with too, but you know.
Yeah, it's one of the quotes I always go back to is that T.S. Eliot quote about, you know, we'll never stop exploring, and the end of all of our exploring will be to come back to the starting point and see it for the first time. So it's like a journey. I always say this about coach education, and coach developer training is the same thing. It's not a destination, it's a journey, and the joy in it is the learning along the way. And with every course that is delivered, every course you facilitate, it's almost a co-learning environment, isn't it? Where you're learning alongside the participants.
Oh, absolutely. You have the cheat sheet and you have the structure. You know where it's going next. So you've got the advantage, but you've got coaches that are really bright and really sharp, and sometimes not even from their sporting context. Sometimes it's coming from other parts of their lives, and they're bringing it in and showing you how you can apply these things to sport. It's absolutely amazing.
So what's next for you? What's next for the club? And you know, what do you see the remainder of 2020 looking like for all of you?
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, hopefully we avoid the scary second wave of COVID so that we can manage our way through the rest of 2020 and get into 2021 with high spirits and an excitement to take things on. At the club level, we're continuing to grow. We will be attacking club licensing over the next 2 years from the Canada Soccer side of things. I think we're going to be really working at how we implement aspects of that. We've already got the foundations of a skills center program that we've been running here for a number of years. So it's going to be formalizing that to meet some of the licensing requirements. And we're really excited about those moves for our club, the members and the players that are going to be here. And then for me personally, I've just taken on this university coaching position. So it's going to be spending the next couple of years really learning what it takes at this level and all aspects of that, from the coaching side on field with the players to the managing them as young men working their way into kind of adulthood in the real world, and then all of the recruiting and nasty business that comes along with trying to run a successful program. So be kind of drinking through the fire hose on that for the next little while, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
It's a great way to sum it up. Drinking from a fire hose. It seems like it's all we do these days, and we're all a little bit overworked and overwhelmed by things. But Barry, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. I feel like I know you a little bit better, not as well as I'd like to, but I've really enjoyed the discussion. I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us on the Canada Soccer Nation podcast, and wish you all the best. And I look forward to working with you and watching your journey as a coach developer, and a part of our Canadian soccer family. So thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Jason, and we'll chat soon.
Excellent. After the break, we will have Brad Fougere come on to wrap things up and preview what's coming up in the weeks ahead. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Canada Soccer Nation podcast. I'm joined now by Brad Fougere to wrap up and get his thoughts on who we heard from today. Let's start with Mr. Isaac Raymond, Brad, in the Island Games in the bubble. 6 weeks together as a group. That's a long time, but I think a great opportunity for a core group of referees to really develop over that period of time. What were your thoughts on having been a spectator watching the games over the course of their duration?
Yeah, for sure. It's a grind. And I mean, we've got other colleagues inside of the bubble. Ali Pike, one of our events coordinators here at Canada Soccer, has been in there working extremely hard as well as Isaac and the referees. So some good Canada Soccer representation, but yeah, just what a challenging situation. I'll be honest, I didn't know that the referees that were in the bubble were also 9 to 5 day job workers who were toiling away in their hotel rooms.
It's even more
making
impressive,
a living at the same
it?
time. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, just a really great opportunity for them. I mean, Isaac mentioned Carly Shaw McLaren directly, who was part of a CONCACAF Mexican Federation program, as was Philip Ducic, who's inside of the bubble too, a referee development program. So she's a rising star, and was on the next gen list until seconds before she arrived on the ground in Charlottetown when she actually got her national badge and moved on to the national list. So exciting times for her, and like Isaac said, there 3 appointments as referee for CPL matches. So it'll be exciting to watch her. You mentioned it in your conversation with him, but Canada Soccer referees have been stars on the international stage for quite some time, and we've had some pretty exciting talent on the refereeing side. Women referees in the game, coaching men's games, coaching at Women's World Cups and Youth Men's World Cups. So great for those opportunities to be there for them, and for the next gen group, who are really provincial level referees who have opportunities at this new domestic championship for the first time in their career as well. So yeah, lots happening there, but I'm not sure I could have done it. I don't know. It's a really challenging thing that he's describing there. I've talked to Isaac a few times during the bubble, and yeah, nothing but empathy for the group that they have there. But kudos to them for doing a great job. And I can't think of a major referee issue that's come out of the Island Games. There's nothing hanging over the Island Games from a refereeing perspective, so that's always a positive.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are always mistakes in every game, just like there's never been a player who's played a perfect game. It just doesn't exist. And so, I think when referees make mistakes, they get amplified because everyone talks about them. Certainly not the same level of scrutiny, I think, sometimes on players, but it's just part and parcel of the game. And it's one of the things about our game that makes it beautiful, is that you have the element of human error, human interpretation. But I would agree with you. I think that the referee's done an outstanding job, and it's a very difficult job, I have to say. Maybe my respect for referees has grown over the years. Certainly towards the back end of my playing days, I had a lot more respect for them as key components of the spectacle on display. But it's maybe I've just softened as I get older. Who knows?
No, you have. You definitely have.
Yeah, I have. Barry Morrison. Let's talk about Barry Morrison. What a great guy. I mean, I love Barry, and I say I don't know him that well. I don't know him as well as I'd like to, but every time I talk to him, I come away with a smile on my face, and I think to myself, I'd love to work with that guy. Like how can you not enjoy being in his company? What was your big takeaway from my discussion with Barry?
Yeah, lots of insight there. Just a really easy going guy to listen to. Like he's presenting things at the right level, and he's presenting thoughtful ideas, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, lots of tidbits to pick up on there. Obviously, interpersonal relationships was something that you focused in on.
Huge.
With him, and
it's huge.
Very clear that he's got that ability in spades. And I think some of the people, potentially even the person who suggested that he be on the podcast, definitely appreciate that most. And it's a difficult thing as a coach, right? Not everyone is an extrovert, and not everyone needs to be an extrovert. But you need to understand that making sure that you're taking the time to get to know somebody and that they get to know you. Maybe that's the more important part. Is a key component to being a coach.
That relationship piece is key. And Barry has stressed that. And you can see that when you work with him and you watch him work, is that he knows that a key component of being successful at what he does is building the relationship with the individual. And I think that's an important thing to stress. One of the things that I really liked about what he said is that everyone's different and everyone needs a different approach. So this idea that the coach educator or the coach developer can do the same thing with a classroom full of coaches is just not right. It's not the right approach. And we know that. And it's great to see people like Barry working in the game and inspiring the next generation of coaches and taking that approach. The other piece that stuck with me too was I think I caught him off guard a little bit about some of the questions with, your favorite coach or your most memorable coach. And I think as we approach National Coaches Week next week, I think it's an important thing to reflect back on, is to think about the people who have impacted you over the years in a coaching capacity. And I'll ask you this question, Brad, who's the best coach that you've ever had? And what do you remember most about that person?
That's a really good question. I had a coach named Donnie McMahon for a time when I was a punk teenager. I think I was 19 at the time.
You're a punk adult now, so what's the difference, right?
Yeah, categorically. The radio station in town calls me a perturbed suburbanite dad, which I take quite fondly to. It's accurate. He was both a coach, and then as I moved into the provincial program at Soccer Nova Scotia, he also was the head coach on the regional program team that I was an assistant coach with. So that was a really exciting opportunity for me to get to work with somebody who had also coached me when I was a punk teenager. He actually is somebody, oddly, that I was looking to reconnect with yesterday. So it's random that you're asking me this question, because I was trying to find his contact information. So Donnie, if you hear this, definitely let's try and connect. He was just somebody who found a way to identify with the individual. I was new to the team that he was coaching. He brought me in. It was a U19 team, and I didn't know many of the players, and he found a way to sort of talk directly to me in the times that I needed someone to talk directly to me, while not alienating the rest of the group, and focusing on this new kid who had, just sort of found his way into the team. So that was something that I really appreciated. And then when we coached together, he allowed me to make mistakes, is probably my favorite thing about him. He was there. He was a presence. He said and did what he needed to do as the head coach. And he let me walk myself into or out of things as I saw fit, because that was what he thought I needed, I guess. I don't know. I'd love to have the conversation with him to sort of help myself have a better understanding. But yeah, he was definitely someone that I really appreciated having in my soccer life. And it's something else I've been thinking about as we've been talking about this, is the move from sort of coach to coach educator, and the people who sort of gravitate toward that world, and just how you interpret them. So, as someone who was a coach, and had other people around me, my technical director at the club where I was, and just reflecting back now on the interactions that we had, and what those interactions really were. In the moment, it's sometimes tough to see what it is that's happening, but they're giving you the freedom or the structure, whatever it is that you need. In my case, it was the freedom to sort of understand and see the error of a certain situation, or right. I mean, it's really important to be able to fail in certain situations, I think, and you don't always love that when it's happening, obviously, but if you don't fail, you don't learn from the folly of the direction that you thought was the right way. Someone tells you it's not, you've always got it nagging at the back of your mind, wondering, well, if he wasn't around, I would have been able to test it out and see if it had worked. Whereas if you have somebody who understands that you need to fall on your face before you realize, oh man, I shouldn't be running down these stairs 3 at a time, or whatever it is. I just think that's a really interesting sort of skill set. And it's just, something that is definitely laudable in somebody who's, frequently a volunteer in the Canadian soccer sphere, right? They're doing it for altruistic reasons. They're certainly not doing it to try and, get a paycheck or get that promotion, et cetera, et cetera. That's just not the reality of our game right now. So, really great to hear from Barry.
Yeah, I what you just said there, the whole gist of it, I think is summed up by that quote: "The best teachers are those who show you where to look, but don't tell you what to see." And that is a key component, I feel, of good coach development. And Barry is the embodiment of that in his role with FDSA, but also his role with Canada Soccer. He's now part of our extended family of coach developers, which is great. I'm delighted that he's on board with us, because I know that he's going to have a big impact on many, many coaches across the country through the work he does on an ongoing basis. In coaching news, obviously, I mentioned, I think, on the last segment there, that next week, September 19th to 27th, is National Coaches Week, and we'll be celebrating coaches throughout the week and making some announcements. What can you tell us about that? What's coming up next week, Brad?
Yeah, well, I mean, today, I guess yesterday, if you're listening to this podcast, as we'll release it tomorrow, we made an announcement that we've taken the Responsible Coaching Movement Pledge, which is the Coaches Association of Canada's program to ensure safe environments for athletes across the country. I know that's something that's been near and dear to you over the last little while, and certainly was enshrined in 2019 at our annual meeting of the members in our Safe Sport roster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a big step forward, and you know, the membership in 2019 unanimously supported the steps that were taken to introduce the Safe Sport roster, which is a suite of initiatives, a whole roster of initiatives that are all geared towards providing a safe, accessible, inclusive, developmentally appropriate soccer experience for everyone who plays the game. So making the Responsible Coaching Movement Pledge is a step in the right direction for us in all of the work that's been going on for years. So very, very pleased to make that announcement and get that information out there. And then we'll be having some more recognitions next week, as we have license recipients being announced. The children's license pilot from 2018 and the youth license pilot from 2019. Those coaches have completed the program and have gotten themselves over the line. So we'll be making that announcement, which I'm really excited about as well. And a whole bunch of other things to celebrate coaches from coast to coast, from the very earliest stages of grassroots right straight through to the highest level. And then obviously on Saturday, Brad, will you be donning your Halifax Wanderers supporters kit? Have you got the full jersey, or have you got the full kit?
I'm not allowed to say.
You're not allowed to say that you're supporting your hometown team.
I mean, I may or may not wear Halifax Wanderers colors on occasion, and Saturday may well be one of those occasions. Yeah, right. Absolutely, I will. I don't have a jersey though. I have a sweater from early days when they first put them on sale, and I picked up some merch from their merch store when they made the final, because that's the kind of guy I am. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about it.
I thought you were going to say you were going to have the full kit, the shirt, the shorts, the socks, everything pulled up to your knees.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to walk down the street in it as well and invite passersby to take photos with me.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, that is a sight to see.
You won't see that sight here, I promise.
Enjoy the match. Enjoy the final. I won't say which team I'm rooting for. I want to see a good game and an enjoyable one, and hopefully the best team wins. So, as always, thanks for joining us. We really enjoy having you on these journeys with us. And if there is someone that you would like us to speak to and profile and have a conversation with on the podcast, please email us at podcast@canadasoccer.com. We will do our very best to get that person lined up and have them join us as a guest. So thanks for joining us. Be safe, look after each other, be well, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Take care.